September 11, 2014, on file with the board for a variance from the terms of Section 6B3 of Chapter 10 of the general bylaws of the town, so as to build a 6-foot by 35.5 foot by 1-story porch addition to the front of the existing single-family residence located at 86 Warren Avenue in Milton, which is located in a residential C district. The addition is set back 13.8 feet from the front property line rather than the 20 feet required under Section 6B3. All of that is set forth in the application that was submitted to the board on September 11th. I have in front of me a copy of the application, a copy of a letter to Mr. McCormick from Mr. Prondak indicating that he had denied the proposal to construct the addition, the porch, a plot plan of the property on Warren Avenue, a list of the abutters, to the property, along with an abutters report and several other addresses. That, I believe, is the extent of the file that we have in front of us today. I see that the applicants are here along with their attorney. Welcome to the Board of Appeals. How can we help?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'm Attorney Bob Sheffield. I'm pleased to represent Tom and Michelle McCormick. They are in the process of enlarging their house. So far, they have gone up. They need to, in order to have a porch, they need a variance from the 20-foot setback. Unfortunately, when this house was constructed 104 years ago, we didn't have a 20-foot setback. So that at that time, the house was built in 1910, and this was the home that Michelle grew up in, and they purchased it from her father. And now they are enlarging it so as to be able to serve their family needs. In order to have any front porch at all, it is necessary to get a variance from the 20-foot lot line, front setback. They've spoken to all the neighbors regarding this, and all the neighbors are supportive and are very happy to see the portion of the new addition, which is already up, and hopeful that the McCormicks will be able to have a front porch. I have the plans here if you need to look at them in detail. And I would say that this is an unusual lot insofar as back in the year 1910, this was the only homeowner that purchased a double lot, making the frontage 120 feet rather than the 60 feet, which is normal and standard in the area. They were required in the construction when they went in and put in a second floor. They were required to keep it from protruding closer to here to cover the original building because of the side lot setback. And they were prohibited from putting in any porch at the time of that construction without the delay that would be necessary to go to the Board of Appeals and get the approval for the full plan, which hopefully will be approved tonight, which is just the porch.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes, sir. I'd be glad
Anything you
answer any
want to add
questions.
to that excellent presentation?
No.
That pretty much does it. Questions from the members of the board?
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chairman.
No.
And their two children are very
Aye.
hopeful that they'll be able to play in the front porch.
So I have a question. So this plot plan that you submitted shows a small walkout set of stairs. Are those stairs protruding from this front?
Those stairs were, in fact, out approximately 4 feet. At the time, there wasn't a measurement taken. However, they were, again, about 4 feet from the existing foundation, which is still in place. So the foundation hasn't moved to,
So this is an existing rendering.
that is existing, yes, that's correct.
So right now, you have, your building is 19.8 feet from the front property line, and it has a small set of stairs.
Yes,
That's right.
And you're going to change that with a, maybe a more of like a country kind of porch?
farmer's porch.
Yeah.
Well, it's to hide the 4-inch variance, the 4-inch back.
The
So
setback.
we had to set the second floor 4 inches back. So the second floor is 4 inches back from the front of the house. This
4
first
inches
floor.
back.
In order that you have the front setback for the second floor.
So that's why
Oh,
that would
so-
hide it.
Yeah,
So what, okay, so what you said was the addition's already been done.
Yes, it has.
And when was that done?
Oh, it's been done this summer and it's continuing.
still under.
But it doesn't look good because it has a 4-inch setback, a reverse
Right.
setback. It's the opposite of what you might
Right.
ordinarily see. The
Exactly.
overhang is on the
the
second
reason we
floor.
did that was just to expedite the building process. Well, we could do it in good weather, you know.
Okay, so now you want to cover that over with this porch, which is universally going to extend into the, well, it's going to exacerbate the current nonconformity.
By about a foot and a half.
By about
Four,
18 inches.
right now it's 4 inches, and now it'll be a little bit more.
Correct.
But this doesn't show it.
That's correct.
So can we have these? Did you bring these for
I
us?
brought those, yeah.
You brought these, is this your only set?
No, I have.
Can we have, at least, can we, well, this is my point.
No, you can have it.
It would be helpful for the board to have what's actually being built in the file, and the only plan that's in the file is this, but this is really showing the current condition.
That's correct.
Okay,
No, you can have.
Got
that, entire set.
And I have I have kind of an overlay that kind of gives a downward look on, I think, the second page there, which will show where the stairs would be existing and where they would be if this were to go through.
yeah, but the stairs are gonna be gone.
The stairs will be
That's
gone,
correct.
yeah.
Are they there now?
Right now, we just have temporary stairs leading from the door.
I see,
We're still under construction.
yeah. And the setback from the edge of the porch to the property is, it actually doesn't show here, but, you know, look, maybe it's 16 feet, something like that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you're representing to us that it's gonna look like this when it's done?
Yes.
That is correct.
And will the shingles be consistent with the roof shingles?
They will, yeah. It's actually going to be a hip roof, so the shingles will
Are we
match.
gonna put a new roof on the building too?
Only a new roof on the, there's a new roof that's already on the
The
addition.
building?
The porch itself would have a matching hip roof.
Or you call that a hip roof?
Yeah,
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 hip roofs now.
I suppose. I suppose
It's just a roof.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a roof.
Yeah, okay. And
Do you want to see a picture of it before and after?
I think it'd be nice. Yeah, that would be great if you have it.
I do, I can see.
He does.
Um,
It might help.
And will the, what will the stairs be made out of?
Stairs will be exact PVC trim with Trex composite decking.
And what will the lattice be made out of?
Lattice will be 1x3 PVC vertical trim as well.
White?
White.
And will the whole house appear to be all uniform, as if the addition
Yep.
was never really done?
Yes. It will appear as one uniform house.
And when would this work be done?
We would hope to have, the holes dug before the ground freezes up. So we'd really like to expedite it. So we'd probably, I would say, all goes well, we could have it done mid-November.
Are you the contractor?
I am not, no, I'm the homeowner.
I know that.
No. Sometimes I feel like the contractor, but no, I am only the homeowner.
Like the hip roof going and the PVC.
Yeah, I know. I've learned some of the
He watches this old
terminology.
house a lot.
Too much, matter of fact.
Okay,
So I can I can show you a picture of.
Good questions. I get a better picture.
This is probably the closest I have of what you have back here as of now. I don't have anything with the siding on yet. That kinda
So that's what
gives
the
you-
house looks like
That's
now?
what the house looks like now. Well, you
No,
can
we have
imagine with the
shingles.
roof and siding, but that's how it looks now, as far as the structure, the overall.
We
idea.
could send a picture of that to Mary.
Possibly. I can possibly find something a little.
I think that's okay. I think the
Okay.
board has a,
Gives you an idea.
yeah, I think it would be helpful to have a photo in the
Okay.
file. Let me ask you, Nick, do you have any other questions? And Steve, do you have any questions? Can I ask if anyone in the audience has any would like to testify in opposition to this application?
We're here for it. We're here for it.
I'll get to you. I'll get to you. Just be
And I
patient.
have to look at it, I'm 2 doors
Just be
away.
patient.
And it's gonna be so much nicer with the.
We have a process, and we're going to follow it. Now it's your turn. Can I ask if anybody is here that would like to support the application? Yes, would you like to be recognized?
Tricia Valentino, I live at 70 Warren Ave. I've known
Welcome.
McFadden since they moved in. And their mother passed away, but she was our friend, and I support it. I've been here before.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Does anybody else like to support the application? Yes.
Ditto. Except I live at 94, there's a house.
94 Warren Avenue,
94 Warren.
and your name is?
Helen Lucy,
Helen.
and,
Welcome.
thank you. I worked at town hall for a while. And,
How did you like it?
I loved it, but then they decided to get rid of the switchboard, and I was out.
Let's just say the Board of Appeals had nothing to do with that.
No,
Okay.
I even offered to John Cronin if I could pay him to keep my job.
I think that's illegal, actually. I think we're going to strike that from the record, Helen. We'll just note that Mr. Cronin denied that request. Yeah, he's still alive, you know. Yeah.
Those were the old days, but it was fun. But,
Back to the application.
back to the application.
What do you think of it?
The house is absolutely beautiful, but this is gonna make it so, I don't know how to explain it, warmer, homey, and for the little bit of conflict here, this is just, these kids have worked so hard to have this happen. And I would the whole neighborhood, that everyone couldn't be here, but the whole neighborhood is for them. I haven't talked to anybody who was negative about it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Okay.
testimony.
I'd just like to add that the, moving the house back, the 6 feet or so would pose an unbearable and unreasonable problem, and it would create an undue hardship.
Did you, thank you, did you speak to the neighbors on both sides of the property?
I
Yes.
have, yep.
And what is it that they said about the application?
They are entirely for it, no problems whatsoever. They're
They
happy.
could have been, they both couldn't have been here, but they
Yeah.
would have if they could have.
Okay. Does anybody else in the audience want to offer any comments or testimony on the application?
Do you want to play on the porch?
Okay, thank you. Questions from the members of the board? Okay, we're going to close the evidence portion of the hearing and begin the deliberations. The open meeting law requires that we do so in public, and as Mr. Leonard is fond of saying, we're going to do that right here and now. Mr. Lumbaum, do you have anything you'd like to say about this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very well presented, very tasteful design. It obviously has merit for a growing family. We've granted this type of relief in the past, and it makes our job easy when you get that support from your abutters and your neighbors. So in the overall, I would tend to vote in favor of the application.
Mr. Graham?
I would also intend to vote in favor of the application for the reasons Steve stated. I think it looks great. I looked at a house on Warren Avenue once to buy, and this one looks really great. So I think it will be an improvement. Certainly, if it will cover up the 4-inch retreat, I don't even know what else to call it, of the second floor, that might be a good reason.
Thank you.
I agree with my colleagues. I think it's well presented and a tasteful addition and something that's well within the range of what this board would typically grant with the kind of support that you have. So I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of granting this variance upon the application of Michelle and Thomas McCormick? Oh, yes. Okay, so you have your variance. Congratulations.
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It'll take us a few weeks to get this in order, and there's a short appeal period. And then Mrs. Fitzgerald will help you with the procedure to record it at the Registry of Deeds,
Awesome.
et cetera. So good luck with your property.
you.
and,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Bob, good to see you.
Thank you, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you want to give him back to him?
Nice to meet you.
Who wants this?
He wants to be away.
Either way, I'll do it if he doesn't want to do it.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Gonna
gentlemen.
show. Okay, it's good talking to you.
Thank you.
I swear to God you did right.
I'll have you known that this room is named after one of our good friends, Carol,
Carol, yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
for a long time.
Yeah, that's
And my
nice.
aunt, Josephine McAteer, was the town accountant for 49 years.
Wow.
I'm just in the process, my cousin tied up her estate. She left me her house in Milton.
Oh, wow.
He fought the death tax. I never knew there was such a thing.
Oh,
She
yeah.
had property in Maine and everything, so I'm just in the process of selling it to my next-door neighbor.
Good luck with that.
Daughter,
Good luck with that.
yeah. I don't think she wants to do any changes. There's no room.
Yeah, that tax. Really that one.
Okay. Is the applicant prepared for the 7:30 hearing?
He's in the men's room, I just took it, he'll be.
You got the selectmen going tonight, huh?
Busy night.
Are you taping us?
Yes.
Oh, you are?
I am.
Oh, boy.
You're not, you're not live now.
That little show is gonna be on television now?
You know what? It's good. They're gonna love it. They're absolutely gonna love it. It's gonna be good. Spice it up.
Oh, boy. I wish I knew that.
It's fine.
Okay. You ready? All right, we are going to call to order the 7:30 hearing, 11:26 to 11:46 Randolph Avenue. This is a continuation of a hearing that I believe originally began on June 12, was continued to July 23rd, included a site visit at some point, the date for which I don't have in front of me, but then was continued to September 10, and has been further continued to October 21. And so in the intervening period of time between September 10 and October 21, today, the Board of Appeals published an amended and restated special permit from the terms of the zoning bylaw for the purposes of permitting the applicant time to take a look at what the board was considering based upon the testimony that we've heard at the preceding four hearings and the site visit, as well as the input that we've gotten from written testimony from various town members, town citizens. So tonight's hearing, I would like to hear from the applicant, we would like to hear from the applicant on that draft amended and restated special permit. So that's the main purpose of this meeting. I will also say that since then, we received a memo from Mr. Prondak, the building commissioner, making comments and observations about the draft permit, to which I haven't replied out of respect for the open meeting law, but we want to talk about that as well. In addition, we received a communication from Mrs. Martinelli and a butter about a couple of comments on the application, which we'll address tonight, and a question as to whether or not this application was related to the land court's decision in the Coulter case from 2012, and some limitations that were set forth in the Coulter case. I want to address the Coulter case up front, and I'm going to invite my fellow board members, both of whom are attorneys, practicing attorneys in Massachusetts, to comment. But I think the Coulter case is different than this case for the following reason, or for the reasons I'll articulate. Let me just say first that the Coulter case was largely about the validity of a special permit, or a series of special permits that were issued over a long period of time, and ultimately was decided on the basis of the validity of a landscaping business on the property. It's distinguished from, in Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9, requires or permits that bylaws and ordinances may provide for specific type of uses which shall only be permitted in specific districts upon the issuance of a special permit. Our bylaw permits special permits to be issued as an accessory use. Let me say this. In the district, an accessory use is allowed on the same lot and customary incident to uses permitted by special permit and not detrimental to the residential neighborhood. This hearing, we've had a lot of testimony over the conditions of the neighborhood. And the history of this use, like in the Coulter case, dates from the 1960s. But I do think is distinguished because, for a couple of reasons. One is the special permit has been superseded, the current special permit has been superseded, or superseded some of the prior special permits. Secondly, the types of uses in the Coulter decision are different than the ones in the Sanatellis decision. And thirdly, we're specifically prohibiting a commercial landscaping business from operating on the premises, which is a large part of what the Coulter decision was about. I think the facts and circumstances of each individual case need to be, I would say, rest on their own bottom or be considered individually, and that's what the board does. I will say that there is some language in the Coulter decision that is helpful to the board and instructive to the board, and which the board will be mindful in considering these decisions. But I don't think that and I'd like my board members to comment if they'd like, I don't think it establishes a precedent or provides us with any particular guidance on what to do in this instance, because the facts are different. Indeed, they're very different. But I'd like maybe Steve or Nick to add. I know they both read the case, and I appreciate it being brought to our attention. Steve?
No, I agree with all your comments, Jeff. I wasn't, based on the memo that was sent over from Mrs. Martinelli, I wasn't quite sure, or I just wasn't quite clear as to what she was suggesting, so I took the time to read Coulter. And I sort of came to the same decision. Coulter was an express determination that a landscaping business would not be allowed, and we've specifically done the same thing here, potentially have laid out language to that effect. And as you said, based on differing facts and circumstances, I don't think that there's anything in Coulter that specifically binds us here. So other than that, I agree forthrightly with everything you've said.
Thanks.
No, I don't think I have anything to add beyond saying I agree with both of your comments just now. I think that we are specifically excluding a commercial landscaping business, and that's as a use on this, the special permit on this property, and I think it's distinguishable on that basis.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Mrs. Fitzgerald if, other than the comments that we got from Mrs. Martinelli today, the comment we got from Mr. Prondak on September 24th, whether or not there's been any other comments submitted to the
What
board.
Jason submitted.
I haven't seen that. This is mine.
This it?
No.
There was something I put in the beginning of it.
Mr. Sanatellis, you want to come to the table? Oh. Okay, so let me just, yeah, we have seen this. Mr. Sanatellis has issued given a note to Mrs. Fitzgerald, which lays out the mulch delivery schedule that we asked for, and includes a reduced copy of the plan that I think everybody has seen. So, let me continue the hearing by asking Mr. Sanatellis, welcoming Mr. Sanatellis and his attorney to the board, and asking if he has any comments that he wants to share with the board based upon what we've given you. I see that Mr. Prondak has joined us. Mr. Prondak, do you want to join us at the table? Certainly. Thank you. Jason?
Good evening.
Good evening.
We're going to take them one at a time, I think.
Okay.
There are a number of items that we would like at least a brief discussion on, Mr. Chairman, and for what it's worth, I was very much involved with Tom Coulter in the early stages, and that clearly was about a landscaping business and is quite distinct from this. It's probably too early to say whether the case will offer precedent in the future, but for now, it's apples and oranges. There's no comparison.
Thank you.
And what we'd like to do as we proceed is discuss individual. By the way, we're very appreciative of the board's efforts. There's a whole lot of time, a whole lot of effort, even more praiseworthy when we consider that you guys are volunteers. It was a nice piece of work, and we appreciate it. There's a couple of points that we'd like some clarity on, possibly some minimal relief on, but we can discuss those in whatever order you choose.
Well, let's go right in order. If you wouldn't mind, I've got a memo from Mr. Prondak that when you raise an issue, perhaps we could also discuss what Mr. Prondak has raised, and we can
Yeah.
deal with the efficient carrying out of the people's business that way. Mr. Barry?
Yeah, on Mr. Prondak's letter, and I have a copy of it here.
Okay, great.
On number one, we have no issue with the restrictions on refrigerator trucks. With one minor exception, it's possible to store a refrigerator truck during that Thanksgiving week. It only involves a total of 2 to 3 days, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Thanksgiving. And it's possible to store it off-site overnight so as to not bother anybody with the fact that it continues to refrigerate and makes some minimal noise, I suppose. The only problem is during those 2 or 3 days, during the day, during the working day, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to have it off-site because as I say, this is not a night issue, but during the day, you can't be going across town or even across the street for turkeys, and that's what it's all about. So that's only a minor issue with number one. As to the other items of Mr. Prondak's, we had no issue at all.
On the whole memo?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the way we'll do this is we'll take your testimony, we will ask you questions, and then the board will deliberate, okay?
Sure, sure.
So, but I don't want this to be this is not so much of a negotiation as much as I want to just, we're the deliberating body, so.
Right.
Let me ask you, so you're suggesting with respect to Mr. Prondak's addition or concern about the refrigerator trucks, that refrigerator trucks be permitted during Thanksgiving?
Right, during the 3 days of Thanksgiving week, on the premises.
3 days of those?
Of Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, leading up to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Just during the business day. I know that truck.
What is that?
Business hours,
Business hours.
What is that? What are those?
8 to 7, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. Proceed.
Well, that was our point on that. If we could get a concession that during those
Prondak,
hours.
do you have a comment about that?
After 7 PM, where would the refrigerator truck go? Precisely.
We would put it across the street.
Down in the back or up in the front by Newcomb Farms?
Down in the back. This is,
I don't know that we're gonna get into the details of what's going on at Newcomb Farms, right? Because we've commented before that this isn't about Newcomb Farms.
Right, but.
Unless you want it to be, because you're the one who asked us to have this hearing.
The refrigerator truck, when it is on site at Eagle Farms, parked right up against Randolph Avenue. In the past, Jason,
that's not true.
well, let's point on the site.
On
plan.
Randolph Avenue?
Yeah. It parks in the parking lot, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it's on the site, and then to take that across the street to Newcomb Farms and park it right on the, against the sidewalk at Newcomb Farms is essentially not, you're gonna hear those compressors regardless, is my point.
But as long as he has the option, he's already suggested it would be on the back of the property, Joe, not the front. Obviously, that's no guarantees long-term.
We're talking a small, box truck from Ryder that has a small reefer in there that kicks on when the temperatures
Go above
are
30.
warm. It doesn't stay on continuously. The noise is minimal. During the day, shouldn't be much of an issue. At night, we can move it across the street. Behind the building is fine.
I think a solution may be to just simply say, if you were inclined to agree with that maybe a certain distance from the Eagle Farm property, maybe 300 feet or something like that would suffice. That way we're not talking about another specific
Yeah,
property.
no, it's a good idea. Okay. Mr. Barry?
As to Mr. Prondak's letter, we have no issue with any of his other points. We're satisfied with the...
Okay, terrific. Thank you. You're gonna stick around, right?
I mean, sticking around
Okay. You done with the selectmen?
for tonight, yes.
Excellent. They come first. Mr. Barry?
Well, back to now, as to the board's recommendations.
Yes.
The main one. As we reviewed them, we had no problems with 1 and 2 at all, and a little bit of concern on 3 chords being somewhat of a severe limitation, but as long as he has the capacity to store across the street, and we can't project the future on that, but for now he does, we really don't have a problem with number 3 either.
Oh, let me say something on that. One of the things, and I know Mrs. Martinelli has raised this in her comments, is trying to draw bright lines between what is large and small.
Right.
And, I'll admit that 3 is it's not too small, not too large. And my thought on that would be that if that doesn't work, the permit, you have the ability to come back to the board and we can talk about it further.
Yeah, it could become an issue, because typically in a season, he'll do 15 or 16 chords, not 3 chords, and it generally gets delivered at once. So as long as he has off-site storage, he's in good shape. Should he not, we have to deal with it in the future.
Fair enough.
If we turn that page over for 4, 5, and 6, there were no issues. We're in agreement.
Okay.
I was a little confused in reading 7 and 8, one which seems to prohibit the use of heavy equipment, and then in 8, recognize the use of heavy equipment. And maybe, I think Jason had less trouble with it than I did. Maybe he can explain where
Well-
we are on that.
Here's what I think it says. It says that you can't move stock,
Right,
but that doesn't mean that you can't use heavy
I see.
machinery.
Okay.
That's the difference between 7 and 8. Now, that's something that's been in your special permit since 2000
That pertains to the property at 1146 Randolph Avenue.
yeah. Why do you ask that?
I ask that because sometimes we do move stock on 1126 Randolph Avenue with a small loader. Like if a person may get 12 shrubs, I may bring the loader near the greenhouse and put the 12 shrubs into the bucket and then bring it down into their car.
Oh,
When I read this, you know,
no,
and...
I'm trying to
and
not
Mr.
draw these kinds of distinctions any longer.
I would assume that it was for the 1146 Randolph
So what
Avenue.
you're saying is, in your retail operation, you move stock with a heavy machine?
Heavy machine being either a forklift
Understood.
or, yeah,
As defined here.
yeah.
That's something we'll have to talk about. Okay. 1126, you do with that?
Correct.
Okay.
We had the most discussion at our end on number 10, where we see a limitation of 125 cubic yards of mulch. And I think 125 cubic yards of mulch was a limitation in an earlier permit.
It was. Mr. Lumbum's been talking about it
Yeah.
for 3 hearings.
Yeah, and then there was relief from it, and I think the reason there was relief for it on a later but past hearing was that the 125 wasn't a practical number. The trucks bring in 70 to 80 cubic yards.
Yeah.
It would be impossible to get them to bring in a lesser number, and at least financially complicated to get any lesser number. So that, you know, if 2 truckloads already exceeds the 125, we'd have no problem with the 2 truckloads, but you're already probably dealing with 140 cubic yards, and you've got some potential problem there. They won't deliver. As a matter of fact, according to Jason, they simply won't deliver partial loads. He has to take the loads.
What is the capacity of the bins that you've got on your drawing? That's really the issue, isn't it? It wasn't on there.
I'm sorry.
It wasn't on there. You know, there's testimony before from I've forgotten his name, right directly behind you.
Jack Carpenter.
Jack wanted the mulch to not go higher than the top of the bin. So what we're trying to do is match the top of the bin with the capacity. And I just don't know how many yards you can fit in it.
You know that, Jason?
I would say we could fit, keeping it at the level, I mean, that I don't know, if you know, without keeping it to the level of the rear barrier, if you will, you could fit 100 yards in there.
How many do you
So
want,
300.
how many are you suggesting that needs to be in 10?
Realistically, if we have 3 types of mulch and the average is 70 yards because it's 60 to 80, you know, the realistic number would be 210.
When they relieved that limitation in the past, there was no sprinkler system, I'd like to add, and that will make a whole lot of difference here.
But what's the capacity? How many can fit? You know?
Right, how high would 210 go? Is it gonna spill over? I mean, that's really a concern, I think.
Right, it's not gonna, it won't spill over. It would probably be 12 feet high, the pile. I think when you guys did the site visit, it was about 10 feet, 12 feet high,
And the bins
Not-
the bins go to,
6 feet.
at the back end?
At the back, 2 bins go 4 feet, and 1 bin goes 6 feet. And it was only because I needed some of the cinder blocks to use elsewhere that we took those off the back.
Is that a possibility, adding cinder blocks and raising the...
We could, and we suggested it. Mr. Prondak put it in in his memo, not allowing that.
But where you're proposing to add in the 13 green giant arborvitaes, and then additional fencing beyond the arborvitaes.
There's definitely room for it.
And I know that that's elevated, so between the arborvitae and the fencing, you know, the mulch, the height of the mulch is gonna exceed the bins, but it's not gonna exceed the
Exactly.
arborvitae and the fencing.
Right.
So you're suggesting that 10 instead of 125, should be 210
Yes.
during April, May, and June. Then you have July. You see how this works, right?
Yes, yep.
This is based on the testimony that your peak seasons were the spring, and you have a declining need. And Mr. Martinelli has said that the spring is the worst, most deliveries in the spring, and that if the capacity is lower, then the situation is better, is what we've heard. So, are the other capacities work for you?
The only problem with the other capacities, the 50 and the 10, is that he's concerned, what if I have left over from the earlier period?
Ah,
And then what do I do with it? You know?
yeah, okay. Do we have a suggestion for that?
We certainly don't mind. He does a great deal with the town as it is, and that might be a practical solution to some extent. But, you know, once he reaches his end of his busy season, if he has left over more than the new capacity allows, it's,
Yeah.
you know.
Okay. Are those the extent of the comments on 10?
I think that was it, Jason, right?
That was it.
On number, if we can go on to number 11, we discussed last time that moving the piles of moss 20 feet would block access to the barn, and I think the board was sympathetic to needing that access. So the 20 feet might not be a workable number, or no, probably a necessary number, given the amount of screenage we now have with fencing and arborvitaes, et cetera.
What is the setback, would you suggest? Is there any setback? I think 20 also came from Jack.
There's, right now, there's about 7 to 8 feet from the property line to the tip of the bin, and then the mulch starts.
And you're saying because you've put the arborvitae in, the setback need not be so extensive?
Right.
I think with the fencing and the arborvitae's and the irrigation, plus there's 48 and a half feet from the rear of, from the fence or the giant screening to the existing arborvitae's. You know, that would help. That 49 feet also helps.
Where's the 49 feet? On 1146?
I don't know, I'm lost. Maybe.
I think.
Right behind the proposed
Oh,
13.
oh. Yeah, but that's not your property.
It's not.
You're just suggesting that that's a buffer because his property is back, because this is where he puts his grass and.
Yeah, it's a garden spot.
Composting, yes.
Composting.
Right.
The reference to 8 feet, I guess that's actually not in number 10. We were wondering, he has no problem with the 8-foot fence, we've not argued it, we're just concerned a little bit about the aesthetics of it. 8 foot on a stockade is somewhat higher than you usually see in a residential area, and we're wondering if the homeowner even wants 8 feet. I mean,
Yeah.
I was wondering the same thing.
So you said 6, right?
yeah,
6 is what you've already put in.
right.
6 is there, that was existing. When we did the plan, it was suggested as 8. We made a mistake there, should have been 6 because it was already existing.
But you've corrected that.
We'd have, yes.
Okay.
That 8-foot reference actually goes over to item 15 on the
I see it.
proposal.
Yeah.
We had no issues with 12, 13, or 14,
Okay.
and we've just discussed the issue that we had with number 15.
Yeah.
Article 16 and 17. Now, obviously, 17 continues to be a little bit tough for Jason, who felt after all we've gone through, if he could get longer than a 4-year extension here, he was hoping to ask for a 10-year permit.
Right. Go ahead.
The reason I'm asking is, if something was wrong within the 10 years, as it was in 2014. A phone call to the building commissioner could rectify that and bring me back in front of the board. So I just thought, you know, since we went through this, I believe we're 6 years into the 10-year permit, just suggested maybe if we could start
Yeah,
2014 for 10 years further.
okay,
Only suggestion. I mean, I'll
understood. Can we back up a second on paragraph 16? Mrs. Martinelli has asked the board what small quantities are. I wondered whether you had a suggestion, or Mr. Prondak might have a suggestion. The idea was that small quantities of landscaping materials were not part of the commercial operation because they were furthering the local business, use by local businesses, which is what we heard at this hearing. But I don't know what small quantities are. We saw the small quantities, and they did appear to be small. But, I don't know. And
One gauge that I've come back to using are things that are not stored in bulk quantity. Small, if Jason had a pallet of, 30 or 40 bags of, 30, 40, 25 pound bags of fertilizer to be sold at a retail level, that would be a typical small quantity in my mind. But if he had, 250 pound cases of fertilizer for sale at a retail level, then I would see that as exceeding that.
Okay.
So it is judgmental. Can be hard to.
Well, it's your judgment,
I understood.
okay? Which is why you're still here. We're going to let you leave.
Why we're here to begin with.
I understand. All right, is your feedback to the board on this, does that conclude your?
It does.
Okay. Can I ask if there's anyone in the audience who wants to comment on what they've heard? Mr. Martinelli.
It seems, this whole thing was driven by the mulch. And 200 yards doesn't really address any kind of relief. I think we're dealing with numbers that right around all along. And it's a huge quantity. 200 yards of mulch is a lot. And we're back to square one. This is why it all started. And the deliveries and the dust and the noise and the trucks. And I don't see any relief coming with that number. I mean, it's a pretty big number.
What about the water, the sprinkling of it should knock down the dust, and the larger quantities
Yeah, but when it
should...
comes to the
Well,
biggest dust is when...
Let me finish. If the sprinkling would knock down the dust, and the larger quantities would reduce the number of deliveries, is that right? So would there be fewer trucks making deliveries if we were able to store more on site? I mean, I'm trying to come up with something.
Yeah, it's the material
I just wanna make sure we
going
get-
out. It's
yeah.
the deliveries are gonna come, and a majority of the dust comes from the delivery. As the trucks are pushing it out, these trailers, they call them, walk on the floor, the stuff keeps pushing out the back, and as it does, this is where the cloud of most of the stuff come. I mean, some does come from the loading of it, and of course it'd be reduced with the sprinklers. The quantity of the trucks going out, that's what it is. Machines running and loading, and that's what kind of drove this whole, our concerns. Besides that and the fire risks and all that, none of that's gonna change, with 200 yards. It's,
Whether he stores 60 cubic feet or 210, if his sales stay the same, then the loading is the same. Is that right?
Correct.
I mean, I'm just trying to get down to I want to make sure that whatever we do is going to make a difference. But if he stores smaller quantities, but the sales continue to be at the same level, then
Well, they
if
won't
the,
because
the loading is still going to be the same amount of loading, isn't it?
well, you were restricting the amount of deliveries also. So it wouldn't be the same. I mean, if you can only get so many deliveries a week, at a certain amount, it'll reduce and give us some relief. If it's back up there, and we
It's
just...
got 2 a week.
Yeah.
It's only 2 a week.
And we have no issue with that.
Jason, I've never seen these things deliver. I can imagine what they're like, but if Mr. Martinelli is saying there's dust that occurs on the delivery as the machine is pushing the mulch out the back, sometimes at construction sites, I know that they hose down stuff.
We can turn the irrigation
Would it
on,
be possible, well, either that or somebody with us to spray it as it's coming out
absolutely,
to keep the dust down? I mean, if that's,
absolutely.
that, you have the capability probably to do that?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if that would help, but I'm just trying to figure something out here.
We're not gonna know until it happens, and you certainly would be.
Yeah.
We have a situation where your landscaping vehicles and the business involved in that comes across the street to load up the mulch and off to your home deliveries and so forth. Is that a typical situation?
When we deliver mulch to homeowners,
Well, no.
We-
Yeah, but also as part of your, we have a specific provision in here barring any commercial landscaping operation. Do we, maybe we just didn't address this, but do you take your landscaping trucks that are generally across the street at the Pepsi, back them in, load them with mulch, and off you go to your commercial landscaping
once in a while, yes.
businesses? I mean, is that, it-
Doesn't really matter to me where the trucks are going,
Well,
it's just
you're
the
making-
sheer volume of them.
you're making the point that it's not so much, correct me if I'm wrong, not so much the delivery of the tractor-trailer loads full of the trucks, but it's then the customers coming in and Jason's landscaping
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The
No, I
trucks
mean,
loading up
collectively,
and-
all of it is
going off.
Collectively, it's all, it's the deliveries, it's the loading, and it's the volume. Like I said, it is, the last few months, it's perfect. The whole place changes, but for those 3 months, it's very intense, it's very aggressive, and it's tough. That's what drove this whole meeting. As far as, it's simple math for the size of the bins too, how high, because we're dealing with cubic yards, so we could come up with a real way of judging what's in them, which would be hard enough for Joe as it is, but 210 yards of mulch is a lot of mulch, like you say, going back in the permits, it started out as bagged mulch, and then it turned into a little bit more, then it's 120, and then it's out of sight, and it's tough. And I think that's a pretty high number, I had one other question too about it. I didn't see the site plan. Is there parking shown on it, or how many parking spaces? And I do think that maybe not the bin in the left would have to come out as far, but it will give some relief. I think there can be a setback off the property. The 2 bins that are on the right-hand side, it's just a driveway in front. But, we're just looking for some relief. And all of those, I thought the thing was drafted well, there were some good ideas there. I thought the limits were reasonable. And, maybe if that works, we see how this goes. He comes back and says, hey, the operation's going better, maybe we could up it by 100 yards. I think we should at least get a chance to get some relief from this and see how it goes. I think it's pretty reasonable to ask. We're not saying, ideally there'd be no mulch. That would be great. Have it off-site somewhere. We never, we had asked them to explore going off-site with it. I never heard anything come back that he did do any exploring, if there were any options. It was always staying here. So we never heard about potential of moving it all off-site, but to just, how much are we really reducing if we're going to 200 yards? What are we going to say was it? 300 yards? 400 yards?
It's not a matter of reduction, it's a matter of the spray, the irrigation system, the willingness to spray as it comes in, and I think in all likelihood that's going to give substantial relief.
dust, maybe.
Well, I do think that, you know, the limit on the mulch, I guess I would have to agree with Mr. Martinelli that, you know, as building inspector, I have reviewed this complaint, and another thing, Mr. Martinelli, and I do find the complaint credible. And the watering certainly, if you're diligent about the watering, you can certainly control the dust. But, you know, I do believe a large part of the complaint and the nuisance here is the consistency of the roads during the peak season of mulch. And that watering doesn't do any good to alleviate the loader, the backup beepers, the slamming of the tailgates, the banging of the loader up against the side of the truck. I mean, it is an intense, I am familiar with loading operations. I drove a truck for a number of years before I could do this. Obviously, the state of I do agree that it is an intense use, and in my opinion, I think there's a good possibility that, you know, lower that to a number, and then review it in a year or after a season and see how that goes.
All right, let me, let's take stock of where we are. Is there anybody else who wants to comment on the application testimony that we heard today? Okay, I hear none. Let me read into the record what Mr. Prondak has asked for. So people are familiar with the 3 or 4 page special permit to which we will attach our findings, which will largely mirror what has been found by this board before in terms of the general and overall character of this area and the number of similarly situated properties and the traffic on Randolph Avenue, et cetera. Mr. Prondak has made a comment that restricting, asking for refrigerating. Oh, okay, so we're gonna close the testimony and we're gonna deliberate, all right, here. And I'd like to, we're gonna open up the dialogue for people to add, and now we'll have a discussion. That's okay. All right. So Mr. Prondak has asked on number 1 that no refrigerated trucks be brought onto the property with the proviso that, and the applicant has stated that the trucks should be permitted to be brought on the property Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 8 to 7 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of Thanksgiving week, from 8 to 7 p.m. and that thereafter they be located a distance of more than 300 feet from the property. Does that sound like a reasonable addition to this? Is that accurate, Mr. Prondak?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay. Let me remind people, the reason that we're here is that Mr. Prondak has asked for an interpretation of the 2008 special permit, and that this is not a de novo review and a reapplication of the conditions of the special permit. It really is intended to clarify, remove, eliminate, repeal, or invalidate provisions of this permit, and perhaps the permit at all. I think that's important to just say. So, and I'm going to raise that again at another point. On number 7, so we've heard from the applicant. On number 7, Mr. Prondak has asked, and the applicant has also asked for a change in this provision. The applicant has asked that the portion that stock may be moved by bobcat or heavy machinery at 1126, which is the main property. And Mr. Prondak has asked that you permit the loading and offloading of trucks by forklift or bobcat, because it will be difficult to offload larger trees and shrubs by hand. I'm assuming that the applicant is fine with that, and I think that's a good point that the commissioner has raised. So I find that to be reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Number 9, Mr. Prondak has asked that the deliveries, which are limited to 2 deliveries of mulch during any week, I had written Sunday through Saturday. Mr. Prondak has asked for that to be Monday through Saturday so that there will be no Sunday deliveries. And then no single delivery in excess of 80 yards of mulch may be made. We've also changed the deliveries of trucks to not before 10:30 or after 4. It used to be 9. And I changed it to 10:30 with the traffic on Randolph Avenue during the commuting hours, which everybody knows I care about. 11 does already specify that the concrete barriers may not be made any higher. Mr. Prodick has asked for that. Mr. Prodick has also asked on 13, it says that the applicant shall not use chainsaws on the premises after 9. Mr. Prodick has asked that we limit that to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., except during the Christmas tree season where 9 p.m. can be permitted, which would permit you to use chainsaws after 5 during the Christmas season. And then lastly, Mr. Prodick has asked that the town of Milton, we add a provision, the town of Milton's representatives have the right to enter the property during any of Eagle Farm's regular business hours for the purpose of determining compliance with the special permit. I think you would ask for that before. I think each of these conditions is reasonable, and I suggest that we add them to the draft of this document. Do you have any comments on that?
No, I think that's fine.
Steve?
No, I think
All
it's
right.
fine.
So I think where that leaves us is that there are a couple of issues. The first is on the fencing, and whether it be 6 feet or 8 feet. I had 8 feet in because that's what we heard. And my own sense is I'd rather have a uniform fence than a non-uniform fence. But I'm also not a member of the fence police department. I wonder if the building commissioner has a preference. My own view is, given the extent of the additional buffers that have been added, frankly, not at the request of the board necessarily, but I do think, assisted with this application, I think the 6 feet would be okay, but I'd like to hear from you.
I actually do prefer the 8-foot fence.
You prefer
I
8?
think just even on a stockade fence alone, that in itself would add some sound barrier, or if we even go to a fence specifically designed for sound attenuation, at 8 feet is appropriate.
Well, it does say that, the portions of the perimeter fencing along the, it says certain portions of the perimeter fencing as shown on the site plan shall have sound attenuating, certain provisions.
Right.
Which
If
I think
you
you
look
would
at,
ask.
there's a lot of fencing that you see along stockade type fencing, whether it be vinyl or wood. You see it a lot along Blue Hill Avenue and along Randolph Avenue. And the difference between 6 foot and 2 foot is from a aesthetics point of view is not all that different. And I think the people that live on those main roads, they tend to go with the 8-foot fences, Canton Avenue as well, because it does provide that extra level of privacy. And you were talking about separating the business use property from the residential property. The 8-foot does give a little bit of extra protection for the residents.
Do we know if the homeowner even wants 8 feet there? That's the privacy that we'd be protecting, and I haven't heard that.
Members of the board? We didn't hear it either, but at least I
could go either way, but I think Mr. Prondak convincing me that 8 feet, given, would be on the site plan between the corner of the lot where the mulch is. Given the obvious testimony about the problem the mulch has created, I tend to, maybe the extra 2 feet I think would be helpful. I mean, I was wondering if it would look weird having an 8-foot fence, but if it's not, if in your experience it's all right, I mean, I could support 8.
We have no problem doing 8. I just thought because of the elevation,
Yeah, I know.
it will look
It's 6 feet now, right?
6 feet.
Because I did notice when I was whizzing by at,
And
well, at 5
And
something.
it pops out at you at the 6 feet.
Yeah.
And we'll be more than willing to put 8 feet. I'm concerned aesthetically.
So, let me just clarify where this fence is. The fence is going to be located, which is the interior lot line for you, as shown on this drawing. Are you also putting, do you also have fence along each boundary of the premises that abuts a residential property? It shows existing fencing, but is that existing stock fencing?
That is existing stock fencing, 6 feet.
So what are we saying here? Saying that you have to maintain the fencing as existing. You have to install an 8-foot fence where the mulch is. Is that what we're saying?
I think we're saying that coming off the 6-foot fence, we're going to 8 foot.
In the area of the mulch.
Correct.
Mr. Prodek, are you following that?
I just want to be clear on what this plan,
This is where the proposed 8 is.
yeah, I believe that's appropriate.
8 along the, 8 along the, where the mulch is.
Then there's 6 along the Martinelli lot line, I believe. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, so
And then-
if you've got the 8-foot here, that, there's no, it eliminates the need to make that 8-foot, and that could stay at a standard 6-foot.
Existing 6 here.
But this fence would be doing most of the work of screening it
Right.
down.
Is there a wooden fence along the entire perimeter of the property where it abuts a residential neighbor now, except in the back? The back of 1146?
Yes, there is. Except the rear of 1146, that's correct.
But you're going to install a fence there,
Yes,
which Mr. Prondak has suggested be 6 feet.
correct.
So if it said that you would either install or maintain not less than 6 feet in height along each boundary of the premises that abuts a residential property, and you would install an 8-foot stockade fence to buffer the mulch pile as shown on the site plan, that would be acceptable to you?
We're coming off the 6-foot fence, going to an 8-foot, and then coming down.
Right.
It will be an ununiform height, but you've also got different functions going on there.
Okay.
I mean, this is a big deal, right? We're gonna hold you to this, so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one issue. The second issue is the mulch being continuously wet, and Mr. Gray has suggested that it also be kept wet both while being stored and while being offloaded. You found that to be acceptable. The third issue is the setback, which Jack, I forgot Jack's last name, I'm sorry.
Carpenter.
Mr. Carpenter has asked to be 20. We've acknowledged that 20 is difficult given the geometry of that swing. Mr. Martinelli has now said that you might be able to get 20 on that first bin. I wonder if we could do this by you, and you've suggested that that's really 8.
7.
7.
7 to 8.
Yeah. So we have that as an outstanding matter. I don't know if the board has something they want to say about that. He's suggesting that it's a 7 to 8 foot setback, but that's not really a setback, right? It's only here, because he owns that.
Yeah, I don't think 20 is doable, nor perhaps necessary when you have an 8-foot fence, 15 or 13 giant arborvitae. We know that Mr. Carpenter has really a mulching area and sort of a storage area in that direct area. I think his main issue was the fire and the burning of the fence. which I think we address and alleviate. And by walking the property, we know that, you know, his yard and his children's play area is way beyond his rear lot line, going towards his residence, so, I think 20 feet is onerous.
Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, there should be something. Because the idea was, the permit requires you to pull the mulch back as far as possible. There ought to be a minimum, it seems to me. I don't think that 20 will work on that first bin, Mr. Martinelli, because 1146 is the abutter. It's only those other two bins where Jack's the abutter. So you really don't have a setback on that first bin, which you could probably pull down further east, closer to Randolph Avenue, but I don't know that it'll have any effect as applied. But the board could say that the setback should be no event less than 7 feet as shown on the plan. That will at least give some setback. And seems to me to be the intent. I would like to have more, but I think your site is tight right there. We all know that. Especially when you get your sprinkler system in, I gather it'd be even tighter. That's a bit of a compromise, I know. What does the board say to that?
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay. I think the only issue is the amount of cubic yards of mulch that may be stored on the premises. Just for the record, so that I know that people are watching this at home, I'll read it so that everybody understands what this says, because this is something that's never appeared in a special permit before. The way it was written now, and picking up on Mr. Lumbaug's comment from a couple of hearings ago, it reads that not more than 125 cubic yards of mulch may be stored at the premises during the months of April, May, and June. Not more than 50 yards of mulch may be stored on the premises during the months of July through October and March. And not more than 10 yards of mulch may be stored on the premises during the months of November through February. Now, that's a bit of a tortured paragraph, but I can assure you that all 12 months are addressed, so that we know what the limits are for each of the months of the year. Mr. Prodigal will have to have a calendar as to how many cubic yards of mulch are permitted during any one period. The applicant has asked that leftover, I'm assuming, particularly for the months of July and August, where you've got you coming down, be excluded from the 50-yard limitation. That's what you asked for. And one of the abutters, Mr. Martinelli, has suggested, and you've also asked for the 125 to be 210. We also know that you've only got 2 deliveries of mulch during the week, and no single delivery in excess of 80 yards of mulch. So that means that not more than 160 yards of mulch may be brought to the premises during any week. And you can't bring the mulch to the property before 10:30 or later than 4. So the real issue is, there's really 2 issues. One is, what's the total maximum number of cubic yards of mulch that can be at the property in April, May, and June? And what's the total amount of mulch that can be at the property during the carryover months? So I don't know if the board has thoughts on that. And I think I've accurately summarized where we are. And this is the last issue. Any of my fellow board members have something they want to say about that?
Just on the issue of the total cubic yards allowed during April, May, and June, I mean, I think there's been enough testimony from Jason for this board to understand that the mulch is a very, very significant part of his business, and it's certainly not my intent here to drive Eagle Farm out of business. My view is that some of the proposals that Jason submitted with respect to fencing, he's going to put 6 feet on the Martinelli lot line. There are 40-foot existing arborvitaes on the Martinelli lot line. He's pushing back his display plant line 20 feet, installing the 2 pear trees up against, I guess, they would then be behind the 8-foot fence. We know from walking the property that Mr. Martinelli has, on his side of the incoming 6-foot fence, he has very tall trees, 50-odd foot trees, and a lot of them. We have the irrigation system going in. In my view, Jason has shown a lot of good faith to address the issue of trying to remediate Mr. Martinelli's issues with noise and dust. I think Jason has made a good case that 125 won't do it for him. It'll cause him problems. So I'm flexible on the 125. I'm willing to go where we need to go to get a good compromise and get this thing resolved. Not to belittle or limit anything that Mr. Martinelli has testified to or brought to light to the board, but we do have significant testimony from other more direct abutters that the business is fantastic and they get along very well with Jason, and he's very accommodating. There's clearly a history here with the issues that Mr. Martinelli raises, and I'm not saying they're not legitimate. They are very legitimate, but I think that Jason has done a good job. It's taken us a while to get there, but I think he's done a good job to put forth proposals to alleviate Mr. Martinelli's concerns as best as he can when weighed against what he needs to do to keep his business running. So, having said all that, I'm flexible on the 125.
I could be flexible on it. I don't know that 210 is the right number, but it seems 125 is not enough. There's a lot of screening between the 2 properties now. There will be. So we just have to figure out what the right number is.
Mr. Prodek, do you have a suggestion for the board?
He wanted bags.
You want a clear reading special permit, which is exactly what we're gonna give to you.
Right.
When you come back here and ask for it to be clarified, we're gonna remind you you were sitting here when we negotiated.
To accommodate 2 loads plus some leftover or something like that.
Again, it is my opinion that the 125 is a reasonable number, and that could be, and he could come back to really, if he were to demonstrate that, number one, Mr. Mark, that the noise and the dust have been brought under control. Then I think it should be looked at beyond that.
Hear from the applicant?
I think the years of doing business for Jason has indicated the reality that 125 is insufficient during that 1 quarter of the year. And if you take a season away from him, how do we get those people back that have had to move on to go somewhere else? It's just contrary to the best business principles to be unable to satisfy the people that come to you year after year after year. And during April, May, and June, they come year after year after year for more than 125 yards. I mean, maybe there's another number, or whether it was 180 or 190, something that might be a compromise, but 125 is clearly, would make it impossible for him to continue his current operation.
If I might, just a thought that comes into my mind as you say that. As we found in another case, it's difficult for a board to say, well, this particular business, you can sell to Joe's Landscaping and Jim's Landscaping, but you can't sell to your own landscaping company. Is it possible that the mulch that Eagle Farms uses for their own landscaping jobs, is it possible to keep that mulch elsewhere, and would that help to reduce the number that has to be stored on this site? Just a thought.
Eagle Farms as a whole does not install a lot of mulch. I don't think it would be significant.
What about 50 or 60 cubic yards? There's 3 bins, 150 to 180, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just throwing out a number, just to try to.
Well, one number that I think actually is, I appreciate that, one number that isn't really thrown out is 160, because 160 is 2 times 80.
2 times 80, but if there's leftover from prior, you're gonna have a little bit of
We're gonna have to
a...
deal with leftover anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
You get, the sense, let me try this. Here's the sense of the board could be that you really don't want additional mulch coming there when you've got a lot left over, say that first of all. We wanted to tie the capacity so that we would begin to get a handle on how much absolute mulch is there, recognizing that you had your peak, your median, and your small season. And, one way to do this would be to suggest 160, and then have something about the fact that that would not include any leftover, something like that. I'm concerned that that gets a little bit more difficult for you to enforce. And there's actually been people questioning whether you can even calculate how many yards were there at any one time, which is really why...
I'm capable of making reasonable estimates.
Okay, good, which is why you're the building commissioner and we're not, but that's good, because that was a question that we did get, and Mrs. Martinelli had asked that, as to whether or not you had an ability to, eyeball it and say, okay, that's 100 or so. I mean... It's not an easy calculation. It's times 3 and 2, and there's a 27 in there, things like that. Yeah.
Pressed, is it loose, is it?
Right. Do you want to try that?
No, yeah.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, that makes sense, Mr. Chairman. The 160 is some, understanding that there could be an overflow from a past delivery.
Is that a reasonable compromise, that we would limit it to 160 and we would permit a certain amount of overflow? I don't know exactly how to write that.
That's the fudge. You know what I mean? That's going to be the area where it has the potential for, I don't want to say abuse, but...
Yeah, I think whether it's 125 or 380, there's always going to be that difficulty writing that. So
There is a big difference, though, between 125 and 380, and I think we're hearing that from Mr. Martinelli.
Right, no, I agree. I'm just saying that the language will be the best it can be, and we will work with it the best we can.
So the proposal that I'll put out there is that you limit it to 160 cubic yards during April, May, and June, 50 yards during July through October and March, 10 yards during the months of November, December, January, and February, but that each of those might be increased to accommodate a certain amount of carryover from the previous delivery to be enforced by the building commissioner. A certain amount of, okay. What does the board say to that? I know that was very artfully. Small amount?
I mean, I'm trying to...
Yeah,
I'm gonna put it in
I think there will, sure, there will be factors. I mean, if it's a particularly rainy season, maybe there's gonna be more carryover because less is moving out, I suppose. But I think some of that is, I'm still able to judge that, and I think we can
You can work with it.
at least begin to work.
If we
with
said
that.
minimal amounts of mulch may be in addition to accommodate any carryover during the changes in delivery. Does that work for you, Nick? Stephen?
I like more elastic terms.
Okay. Does anybody else want to add anything to this hearing? Okay, I'm going to call this hearing to an end. I'm going to request a motion on the adoption of an amended and let me add one more. one more issue. The last issue is that the, Mr. Sanatellis has asked for an extension of the permit. And as the acting chair, I'm actually sympathetic to the request, but I don't think we can properly grant it in the way that this forum was designed. The forum was designed for, it's really an enforcement order under the 2008 special permit. And I think it's unfair at this late time after, and I know you asked it before, Mr. Barry, and I don't think I gave you a full answer, but I do think it's unfair and a little bit out of order, with all due respect, and I know that, I don't mean that negatively, to seek an extension at this time. The person who asked us to come here is the building inspector for the purpose of enforcing the 2008 order. We've taken steps to clarify that the 2008 order is being amended and restated, but it's not being extended, partly because it wasn't asked to be extended. And that's not to say that I or any member of this board wouldn't entertain an application to extend the order at the appropriate time. We are requiring that you reapply to the board within a time period sufficient to extend the permit prior to its expiration, so that we have, and knowing how long this took, we have enough time to consider it. And we're not requiring that you not come in front of us till 2017. So I'll leave it to you as to decide whether or not you come back. But I'm more than happy to hear from the members of the board. But as the acting chair, I don't think we can consider that at this point.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion that the Board of Appeals adopt an amended and restated special permit substantially in the form as has been heard today, and that we will incorporate the findings made by the board at the various hearings in the usual and customary way, and that this special permit would replace in totality every special permit that's been granted on the premises to date, and be a standalone document governing the use of the property at 1126, 1146 Randolph Avenue to be enforced by the building commissioner in accordance with the town bylaw. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the members of the town for bearing with us during the 5 hearings that we've had in the site visit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Prondak, thank you very much. I'll take this one. Mr. Bonelli.
Thank you guys for your hard work.
Thank you. This is you, no? Oh, no. Well, tonight we have another one?
Yes, wait, yes, we got one
So
more.
over the summer, you can figure out 150.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Sorry, I took an extra session.
Thanks, guys.
Tomorrow?
You email me early in the morning if it is. I don't think it is.
I think we swapped off.
Evening.
Oh, I thought we were going home.
Almost.
5 minutes.
Oh, it's the fill?
It's the fill.
All right.
We thought 126 cubic yards was a lot of material.
I know. Okay, what, oh, I see. Okay.
This is close to where I grew up.
Where did you grow up?
306.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, it's very close.
Very close.
Is that Forbes Road? Yeah.
Well, it's the road that, the private driveway that goes up from across from Pond Pond. My brother's there now.
Is that So there's a couple that just bought it. I just went in that house.
That's,
Is it the one that's got the, So you grew up in that house, is that that?
I grew up at 306.
Yeah.
And my grandparents and my great-grandparents were at 300. My brother is now in 300.
Huh.
So hopefully it's not a problem on this case, but I don't think we're abutting.
Anyway, I was just in your home.
No, I think I should know this area.
So you're... If you go toward Pompon and you took your next right.
It's the next driveway. You know, the driveway, where the house burned down, the mansard roof house burned down at the end of the street, right? At the end of the driveway, up that driveway. Goes up to the Beatrice Forbes' house. Right, there's several houses on it.
Are you on the right-hand side?
No, it would be the left.
You were on the left-hand
Yeah,
side.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, you know the one I was thinking of, yeah. Yeah, but you were right across the street from it.
We were across the street, yeah.
Yeah.
Till 1975. I'm dating myself now.
So you three when you moved.
What was I? Sixth grade.
I graduated from high school,
Yeah, I was gonna say 79, right here.
82.
Okay, next subject. Where do you live now?
Hinkley Road. Right next to the newly resurfaced Central Avenue. Much quieter at home.
Now that everybody knows where you live on TV.
They all know anyway.
We're gonna call to order our 8 o'clock hearing on the resurfacing of Central Avenue. Upon the application of Michael and Cynthia George dated September 22, 2014, on file with the board for a special permit under the provisions of section 483, earth materials removal and deposit of fill. The applicant proposed to deposit approximately 3,200 cubic yards of clean fill onto their property located at 328 Adams Street, which is located in a residential A district. The purpose of the project is for the installation of a granite terrace, swimming pool, and other landscaping features. All is set forth in the application on plans with the file, on plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. My name is Jeffrey Mullen. I'm the acting chairman. Tonight, to my immediate left is Nicholas Gray, board member, and to my immediate right is Stephen Lumbo, a member of the Board of Appeals. I have in front of me the application submitted by Attorney Edward Corcoran on behalf of Michael and Cynthia George. I've got a letter from Mr. Prondak, the Milton Building Commissioner, to Mr. Corcoran, calling to Mr. Corcoran's attention the need for approval of the Board of Appeals. I've got a number of exhibits to the application setting forth with the requested relief along with the reasoning articulated by Mr. Corcoran. And I've got a set of drawings that come in 4 sheets, including a certified plot plan, existing conditions plan, a drainage plan, a soil prep plan, and a master plan for the premises, laying out the work to be done. I believe that's the entirety of the file of the board. I see Mr. Corcoran is here with Mr. George.
Yes.
Welcome to the Board of Appeals. How can we help you?
Appreciate your time. I am joined by Michael George, who is the owner of the property at 328 Adams Street. He purchased it just over a year ago. I have some photos that I think will be helpful to the board, including the aerial photo of the property. 328 Adams Street is part of the old Forbes estate. 328 was built by Ralph Emerson Forbes, who was the grandson of Ralph Waldo Emerson, and was built in 1903. It was a large mansion-style house on a 5-acre parcel of land. For a long period of time, it was owned and maintained by the monks from a religious order after the Forbes sold it in the mid-50s. And from that time on, the property has really been sort of allowed to kind of disintegrate, if you will. It became overgrown outside of the area immediately around, which you can see from the aerial around the property, the house itself. we are going to disrepair. The Georges have moved in and are restoring the mansion to its former grandeur, doing a beautiful job. And they propose to add some outdoor living area that, if you look at the aerial photo, sort of in this area back here. So the area on the plan, so this photo is this on the plan. And in this area, to the rear of the property, they propose to install some outdoor living area, swimming pool, outdoor patio, and amenities like that. It requires a fairly significant amount of fill because the property drops off pretty significantly from the foundation of the house in all four directions. A lot of it's eroded away from the foundation, so the plan is to bring some fill back in, restore some of the ground around it, and then fill up. There are a series of permits that were necessary. The second photograph, the next set of photographs show the area in question. This first one is on sort of the back side of the property, looking back at the area in question, and there is permission to build a freestanding wall that will become a part of a retaining wall system that will be installed if this permit is approved. The swimming pool and all the work will go on the other side of that. But the plan is to raise it fairly significantly, at least up and above the top level of that wall. In addition, so most of the area is in what's being proposed, a series of retaining walls. There's a 48 by 20 foot pool, an outdoor fire pit, a fireplace, a spa, and some other things. So sort of a really nice new area in the back. And then in the front, as you come in the driveway, there's a lawn with a wall that's being installed. You see it down below, and that also sort of slopes down towards the front of the property. The plan is to level that with that retaining wall and have it sort of as a children's play yard, where you can sort of have a flat level part of the property where they can play their sports games, perhaps at the skating rink or something. So to do that,
buttons today, Mr. Corcoran.
to do that, I know you wouldn't want, problems with having a skating rink, slicing open, allowing the skating rink. But to do that, it really requires a significant amount of fill. And so it's an interesting bylaw that the board administers, that we bring in more than 200 cubic yards, if we remove more than 200 cubic yards, requires a permit. I don't know the genesis of the bylaw. We certainly exceed in that amount of fill by a substantial amount. We think it's a pretty straightforward request, and that asks the board approval.
Any questions?
I've got a couple of questions, Attorney Corcoran. Under 4A4, list out a couple of the issues we need to sort of talk about, I think. On these fill cases, we have questions about mode of transportation, how many truckloads, how often. I know that's a tough turn going up and down Adams, coming out of that driveway.
It's actually not a very difficult turn. That driveway is fairly wide, and it is perpendicular to Adams Street, and then there's a gentle turn off to the left as you come into the property.
Right.
So this is a fairly wide driveway. I think and it's fairly flat as you come into the area gently.
I'm thinking in terms of, do we know, we're talking, what's the number here, 3,200 cubic yards. How many cubic yards in an average dump truck load?
This is Tom Grant. He's overseeing the installation of all of the work that's being done.
Good evening. We anticipate bringing triaxles in triaxle trucks to bring as much in as possible. We're not looking to, we're trying to get as much material in as possible, as quickly as possible during optimal times. Usually between the hours of 9 and 3. We're probably going to have about 70 trucks, 70 loads coming in. We try to get, I would say, maybe 8 trucks a day, 8 truckloads a day. If the, what we plan to do is have one of our laborers at the, on the corner of Adams, where you turn into that private drive. There is a lot of activity on Adams, so we understand that. So we just want to make sure that the trucks can come in and leave without disturbing the residents. I anticipate bringing the fill in no more than 7 working days. We would not be doing it on the weekends. It'd be Monday through Friday, within the, not around rush hour. It just really wouldn't make sense. So we would be staggering those trucks.
Are you coming in from the north on Adams, south, or?
We would be coming in from the south. Well, we're coming off of 93 north.
From the south.
Mhm.
Through East Milton, by the new bank.
But you're coming up there.
Right.
More questions?
Not at this moment.
I was just staggered by the amount, that's all. That's the main concern. I mean, it's a short amount. I mean, I guess, can we hear a little bit more about why so much is necessary? I mean, not that, I don't know if that's our thing, but I mean, obviously the bylaw, it triggers our involvement at 200, and we're talking, so I don't want to do the math, but, you know, significant increase
Probably
over that.
almost 20 times.
Yeah.
15 times.
It's a 5-acre property.
Yeah.
It's not an insignificant, property.
They're filling sort of a quadrant, well off of the property lines. The setbacks are pretty significant off of each property, more than 60 feet off of each property line.
So if I were to draw a line on the certified plot plan where the fill was going, it's just, because I'm not, I see where this proposed retaining wall is with the curb and the pool, so it's in sort of that area?
This is a...
Oh, you've got it there?
Yeah, I thought there was one in each of your...
Got it? Make it that far down.
That's in the original.
Okay.
That shows you graphically.
Oh, there it is.
Where the...
Never mind. It's on the bottom.
Where the,
Where it's going.
Right. You can see, for example, as you come out the pool towards the east, north is here. It steps down, so taper down, and then it's allowed to go into sort of a natural state before you go into the property that abuts. In fact, the property that's abuts is owned by the Milton Land Conservation Trust. Left to be
You all set?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just, it's the drainage, right? I mean, have we heard anything about the runoff from that?
There's attached to this is a drainage plan.
Yep.
The site prep and soil erosion plan.
Okay.
So that the, line of hay bales stacked completely around.
All right, I got it now.
Protect.
Yep.
All erosion. All work is being done outside of any wetland area. There is wetland buffer that's on the property that abuts to the northwest.
Yep, yeah, I know.
Forks Woods.
Yeah, walked around in there a lot, so I think I've got that part. All right, that's all I have.
How many trees are coming down?
You know, at this point, we've taken some trees down already, but I don't think there's much of anything left to be done in that regard.
Would you be willing to accept a condition that would not prohibit, but express a desire to remove as few trees as possible?
From here forward, we're going to probably end up planting some trees, just so you know. Yeah, I think that would be reasonable.
Where is the fill coming from?
It's coming from the South Shore. It's, right now, I think we've got it narrowed down to a company called PA Landers. They do quite a bit of
I know
site
they
work.
are.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do a lot of asphalt work, don't they?
yeah, and back in business. Is it, what's the nature of the fill? How would you describe it?
It is, we've actually went through a pretty long process of, there's really not a lot of sand around this area, and we've looking for something that will both pack well, but also be able to percolate. So it's a gravelly sand mix. It's not like recycled asphalt. It's not a processed gravel. Basically it's a natural byproduct of the work that they do. So it's I would say a gravelly sand.
Can we classify it as clean fill?
Absolutely.
All right, so what I'd like, this is where I'm going with this. You know, I don't think anyone in the town wants this to become a dumping ground for some three-decker in, even if it's from the South Shore.
Sure.
So I just make that suggestion, some type of, the language would be a gravelly sand mix of clean fill materials. Regardless of its source, we just have an idea of what we're getting.
Sure.
Or what Mr. and Mrs. George are getting.
You do specify clean fill.
You do, in the application? Okay. Could we also, you would also make a representation to us, and we would require that there'd be no resulting drainage of any surface water or runoff onto any abutting property?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that'd be fine.
There's no Concom jurisdiction here at all?
No.
They didn't have anything to say about this?
They have no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We have a separate action pending with the conservation to store stone wall back in the corner of the property, because there's a portion of the stone wall
That failed.
Stone
You know where
wall.
that, that area? Yeah, the wall failed,
that,
so we're going to try to
So he's
reconstitute it.
restoring, and he's restored to a point where he's gotten to the 100-foot buffer.
I see.
And we have reached out specifically, I've talked to Jim Camo at DCR. DCR owns the land that abuts Corps of Woods, and we were due to be on Thursday night before the Conservation Commission, but for reasons that aren't quite clear, we're not meeting on Thursday, it's been rescheduled. So, but we'll be seeking an order of conditions.
All right. So you say it's 3,190.94 cubic yards. That's the net volume.
Net.
That suggests that there's some cutting here, right? So you're taking some soil off, too? Otherwise, I wonder why we have a net number. No, I see the calculation. I just can't figure out what's actually happening.
Well, I think that net number is, there's some loam on the site that we strip off.
Okay.
And then we'll amend it with some organics. That's probably where that net
All
comes
right.
from.
All right, so it's not like you're taking a whole lot of bad soil off and bringing in a whole lot of new soil. There's not a larger gross amount coming in, because if there's 70 loads, 8 trucks a day, you said 7 days, but the math isn't perfect.
Right, there's always gonna be a little bit of variable on each day of how many trucks. It could be one truck, two trucks. It will vary, depending on the traffic.
And how big are these trucks?
They're triaxles.
What cubic
So,
yards?
they can probably carry about 20 ton, which is approximately 26 yards.
Yeah, 26 or 20, yeah, no mulch, right? They're mulching these
No.
trucks?
Please.
Not sprinkling it, or?
Okay,
Say 26 yards
yeah.
on.
You're basically building up the yard so that you can enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's not,
Could have said that at the start.
it's not particularly usable. Yeah.
Right. It's up here and it
That's correct.
slopes down. You want your kids to be able to play in the grass and you want to be able to have a swimming pool in your
That's
backyard.
it.
Right.
Well said.
Fair enough. I don't have any further questions.
No.
You know the area better than all of us.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in favor of the application?
I just had,
Oh, nobody?
I'm sorry, what are we, 3,600? 3,200.
There's there's 3,600 coming in and 400 going out. So there's a net
So,
of 3,190, rounded to 3,200.
well,
Right.
coming in, if there's, you said about 26 yards per truckload?
Yes.
Let's give us 123 loads. I thought you said-
Approximately.
I thought you said about 70 loads.
Well, that was just doing some quick math. That number, that 3,200, that's a very high number. I don't think we're gonna be up that high. It's probably not gonna be, that many cubic yards. So when I looked at the plan as well, you know, we're using material on site too. So that value is gonna be dropped down.
So maybe we'll do something like this. We say a maximum of 3,200 cubic yards. You'd be delivered only Monday through Friday, not during commuter hours, either in the AM or the PM. That you take steps to manage the traffic on Adams Street, as you said. I don't know that are you
No,
suggesting
my-
a maximum number of loads per day? Is that
Well,
what you're
my only
thinking?
thought is, you know, it's Adams Street, it's a busy street, Fontbonne Academy is right there, or close by. I'm just looking at it from a safety point of view. Somewhere between 70 and 120 odd truckloads coming in over a course of a week is upwards of a dozen a day or so, potentially. I think we just gotta be careful, that's all.
Yeah, it won't be going by Fontbonne, as you know. We fall short of it by a
Right.
couple hundred yards.
If you're coming up.
Coming up.
But that's what he said.
Adams.
Well, do you,
Coming in that
could
way.
we say that the permit only permits you to come from the south? That will matter.
Yeah, I
Otherwise,
thi- I
you go
think
through
that-
Milton Hill.
Right,
and
I-
Deal with
they-
those folks.
Right, they wouldn't allow that, trailers to go down that way anyway. Yeah, they want to jump right off the South Expressway and come right onto,
Come right through East Milton where there's no traffic at all.
And probably reasonable to suggest that it would be between 9 and 3.
yes.
Yeah.
And so that's really the time of day when school is in session. It would be less likely that you would have students.
Then I could look it up.
Yeah, it would,
Yeah, they're after 3.
any earlier than 9, that corner of Adams and,
Center. Otherwise, where I'm thinking.
you know, it's a crosswalk there for the kids going to St. Agatha's.
Oh, down.
There's a
Squantum.
crossing guard to Squantum Street. I think he'd be coming off of Squantum, wouldn't he? He's coming 93.
You'd be taking a right.
So, I think we should keep it to, well after 9 AM.
Can you do after 9?
That'd be fine.
10?
9 would be a little better. We'd get it done quicker. It'd be less days to be
Yeah,
on
the
the
kids are
road.
usually, you know, they're in
Say
school.
9 to 3, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
But I don't know that you want to limit it, the number, absolute number of trucks.
No, I'm not
Let's
saying
say
that,
the
I'm
police
just,
department
yeah.
can deal with that if they believe it to be a nuisance. I think, I'd like to suggest that we make certain that it's clean, Phil, that we prohibit any drainage onto adjacent properties. We limit it to 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. We require that you manage the traffic with your personnel at Adams, as you said. I really think those are the conditions that we've heard. Oh, and that you take steps to minimize trees, tree removals. And maybe put a, let me say this, make a motion of supporting that and asking the board if they would, if there's a second, if there's a second to that motion?
Second.
And all in favor, granting a special permit to the George family?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we've got your special permit.
Gentlemen,
Take
thank
a
you.
Little while for us to put this together. Sensing that you might be you're out there now, doing the work now.
Correct.
When would you place the fill?
As soon as possible, as soon as we have that permit in hand.
Okay. We'll do our best to get it out, and you can deal with Mrs. Fitzgerald on the details of how to get it recorded and fully executed. All right, thank you very much.
Right?
Good to
Thank
meet
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.